Hello kids, so we will be starting with our first chapter under intelligence today, classification. This is a very easy chapter, very easy to understand. The questions are also very easy, so you'll have a good time going through this chapter. So let's get into the definition. Now, what do we mean by classification? So classification, basically, just like the word says, what we are looking at is classifying. We will be classifying, either it could be a word, it could be a letter, or it could be a number. We classify these based on some common properties. Okay, so classification, you can broadly divide it into three types. There can be word classification, letter classification, or number classification. Okay, so now what are these? What does it mean to classify? So basically, in most of the questions under classification come under the type of finding an odd one out. So you might be given four things in which there might be four options, and in that you will be asked to find the odd one out. So then you classify the other three options based on some common property, right? So there might be 1, 2, 3, and then a fourth one. These three options, you will see that it comes under one specific property, and so the fourth one will be the odd one out. It will be very clear once we do a couple of questions. So let's get into word classification. Now, in word classification, as you can see in example 1 and example 2 as given here, basically you will be given four words, and mostly the questions are in the form of finding the odd one out. Now, how do you find the odd one out? On what basis is the relationship given? So usually, mostly, the relationship is based on three of these. I've mentioned three things here. Either synonyms and antonyms, as in, synonyms are the words which are similar and antonyms are the opposite words. So it might be that you are given four options in which the first three words are similar words, as in, like words with similar meaning or the same meaning. And the fourth word would be a completely opposite word, or a word that is not related to the other three words at all. So in that case, you know that the fourth one is the odd one out, right? And it could also be based on the area of usage. So for example, you have pen, pencil, book. Pen and pencil are used for writing, right? But a book is not used for writing. Book is used for reading, or book is something on which you write things. So in that case, the book is the odd one out. So that is how you get based on area of usage. And then you also have place, work, origin based classification. An example of that would be, let's say you have four options. I'm giving Uttarakhand, Noida, Delhi, and Indiana. So Indiana, even though it sounds like India, it's a place in US. The all other three are places in India. So since there is this common property, you know that Indiana is the odd one out, right? So that's how we find it. It's very easy. I've given you two examples here. Find the odd one out. You have Alfonso, Malgoa, Sherbati, Kesar. Now, so you would know Alfonso, Malgoa are very famous types of mangoes, right? Kesar is also a famous type of mango. So here the odd one out is Sherbati. Sherbati is not a type of mango. It is a type of rice, a type of wheat. Like Sherbati rice is quite popular. So here, since all these three come under a specific domain, which is mango, and Sherbati does not, here Sherbati is the odd one out. Similarly, now we have other find the odd one out: rhombus, square, rectangle, kite. Now this might be a bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, you can easily solve these questions. So let me take you through the thinking process. Now you have four figures, and now you think, okay, how do I find a difference? Four of these are quadrilaterals. All four of these have four sides, right? So it's not that. Now we try to find some other difference. So an easy way is to always draw the figure. So let's just do that. Let's first draw a square. Okay, just my drawing is not great, just assume this is a square. Okay, and now let's draw a rectangle. Okay, assume this is a rectangle. And then let's have a rhombus. Okay, and now let's have a kite. So drawing these figures really helps you figure out, if there is any figure that stands out. So you see all four of these have four sides, so it's not the number of sides. Is there anything else? Let's look at the angles. Here, it's an square has all angles is 90 degree, right? All of us know that. What about a rectangle? The same thing for the rectangle. All angles are 90 degree. Now, what about the rhombus? Okay, so this might be a little confusing. I mean, the rhombus and kite look similar, so I'll just write it here. This is a rhombus and this is a kite. Okay, so now you look at the rhombus. In the rhombus, the angle between any two sides or sides is not 90 degree, right? So so it's the same thing for the kite also. The angle is not 90 degree. So it's not, but the problem here is there are two figures where the angle is not 90 degree. So you want one figure that is different, right? Because you need to find the odd one out. Right, so it's not angles that you need to be looking at. What else could you possibly look at? So we have gone through sides, we have gone through angles, to no luck. So now another thing that we know when we learn about quadrilaterals, when we learn about closed figures, is we look at the diagonal. So now let's just take a look at the diagonals of all of these. So I've drawn the diagonal for the square, rectangle, rhombus, kite. Okay, so now let us look at the angles between the diagonals. Okay, so for a square, we know that the angle between the diagonals is 90 degree. The same goes for a rectangle. These are properties that you would have learned in school. It's also right. Okay, and now for rhombus also we've learned that the angle between the diagonals is 90 degree. But for a kite, the angle between the diagonals, all of these angles are not necessarily 90 degree. So here in this case, from the angle between the diagonals, we have come to the conclusion that the odd one out is a kite. Okay, so I mean, it might seem difficult, but once you do a couple of questions, you'll get a hang of it. So just know the thinking process. You look at the figures, you see if they are quadrilaterals, then you draw the figures, you look at sides, you look at angles, and then you look at diagonals, and then you get it, right? So it's a fairly easy process. Once you get the hang of it, it'll be fine. Most questions from this chapter are very easy. Okay, so that's it with word classification. Now let's move to the second kind, letter classification. So what happens in letter classification? What you have basically is, it could be, now you will be given a couple of letters, as you can see in example 1, and there'll be a couple of questions. It could be based on one important thing that questions are usually asked on, is the position of the letters in the English alphabet. Right, so what do we mean by position? Right, so here you have A, B, C. The position of A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, and so on and so forth. Right, so and then D would be 4, and you know how that goes. So questions could be asked based on this thing is something that you need to keep in mind. Addition and subtraction in the position of letters also. So now what does that mean? So for example, it could be that, so for example, if you have B, D, E, G, so here it's the B, if the position of B is 2, the position of D is 4. So it's basically 2 plus 1, 2 plus 2, right? And then the same thing for E. The position of E is 5. The position of G is 7. So that's 5 plus 2. So you might need to add the positions. All of this will be clear once we do questions. It could also be reverse order or opposite pairs of letters. So by that what we mean is, so the opposite pair for A would be Z, right? So the first letter and the last letter, and so on and so forth. And then you would do the same for B. For B, it would be Y. Right, so all of these are things you need to look at, and also vowels and consonants. So sometimes they might give combinations where like you'll be given 4 combinations. Let's say A, E, S, D, S, V, or something like that. So here, if one combination might have vowels and the other combination would not have a vowel. So usually the one that does not have a vowel will be the odd one out. Right, so just see, once you do questions, this will be very clear. I have a couple of questions for you guys. It'll be clear after that, just to know when you see questions from letter classification, what major areas can they come under. This is why we have mentioned this. While revision, this will be very useful. So either the position, addition and subtraction, reverse order, or vowels and consonants. Okay, so now let's go on to the first example. Okay, so if the English alphabets are divided into two equal halves from A to M and N to Z, such as A corresponds to N, then which letter in the later half would be corresponding to letter K? Okay, so it's a long question, but it's a very easy question. So you're dividing the letters from A to M. So basically A, B, C, and so on and so forth till M, and N to Z. So this you can write N right below A, right? Element O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay, so Z would come at the end. Now we need to see what would correspond to K. So which half would K come under? K would come under this first half, right? So this is the first half, this is the second half. So you know that K comes here. J, K, L, M. Okay, so you have this. You have K, L, M. Basically, this is the this is the third last letter in the first half. So what you need to do, just find the third last letter in the second half. So you know U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Right, so you see this correspondence. Basically K corresponds to X, just how L corresponds to Y and M corresponds to Z. So this is very simple, and you've gotten your answer as X. Okay, right, so that was one question. We'll just do one more question under classification. Okay, now yeah, this is what I had said. You will see this is something that I've already discussed. So you need to choose the odd one out. You have Z, X, V, I, G, E, U, T, R, and P, N, L. Okay. Now, is there anything that you can sort of figure out? All of these seem like random letters, right? So, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay, there is one, space for one letter here. Okay. Here, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I. Okay, there is a space for one letter H here. L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U. But there is no space here. But here, L, M, N, O, P. Okay, so we've gotten this. So you see, for all of these three combinations, you see that there is a space for one letter each between the first two letters. But in this combination in UTR, there is nothing. So because L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U. So U comes soon after T, but for all other combinations you see that there is a space. Okay, so here there is H, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, L, M, N, O, P. Right, so this is the one that stands apart. UTR is the one which stands differently, and so you know that this is the odd one out. Okay, so you just look at the letters, you see if there is something you can derive. Just look at it generally, it helps. And another thing that you can do is, like I said, like I mentioned before, write down the positions of the letters. That will also be very useful. So write 1 for A, 2 for B, 3 for C, 4 for D. So if you try different methods and you just cannot get the answer, you can just write the positions for each letter and then try figuring out if there is anything that you can see from the positions. That also helps. Okay, so that was letter classification. Now we go on to number classification. So basically the same thing that we have done for word and letter, but here we will be looking at numbers. Now, okay, so in number classification, the relationships could be based on either addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. It could be square root, cube root, even in odd numbers, prime numbers. So you all know what this is. I don't have to explain it, right? You know what are square roots, what are cube roots, even numbers, prime numbers. Yes, these are things that you already know. So, but when you see questions which come under number classification, just remember, okay, it might be prime numbers, it might be even numbers. I can use any of these things, right? So just keep all of these in mind when you do the questions. So let's just move on to the first question. Which one does not belong to the group? 63, 65, 84, 91. So see, addition and subtraction, multiplication and division, square and square root, cube and cube root, comparatively these things might take some longer time, right? So the easier ones to figure out are the last two that I've mentioned, even and odd numbers, prime numbers. And the easiest in this is even and odd, because you just have to look at the last units, right? So just try to see if this even and odd works first. This can be the first thing you look at. Okay, so let's just see if even and odd works. Now 63, 65, 84, 91. Yes, it works. If you see 63 is an odd number, 65 is odd, 84 is not odd, 91 is odd. So you get that 84 is the odd one out, right? So when you look at even and odd, it's the easiest one. So it's always better to just look at that first. Now example 2, 72, 45, 81, 28. Okay, does even and odd work? No, because the first two are even, the second two are odd. So that does not work. Now, what else can you look at? Prime numbers, yes, but it might be a bit time consuming because, you know, these are some larger numbers you need to look at. Let's look at square and square root, cube and cube root, because we've seen a very famous square number, 81, right? So we all know that 9 square is 81. This is a famous square number we have. Now let's look at the others. Is 72 a square of anything? No, right? You know that 9 8s are 72. So so basically it comes between 9 and 8. So 8 square is 64, 9 square is 81. So 72 comes in between. So it's not a square of any number as in any natural number. You only have to deal with natural numbers at this point. Okay, 45, again, no, it does not come under anything. Basically you have 6 square, it comes between 6 square and 5 square, right? So it doesn't. 28 also does not come under anything. So you see that 81 is the only square number here, and so this is the odd one. Okay, so you just keep this broad figure in mind. Addition and subtraction, you see, it could also be based on other things, okay, but most of the questions comes under all of these. So just keep this in mind. Check for even and odd first, then square and square root, or cube and cube root, and then prime numbers, and then multiplication and division and addition and subtraction, and you're good to go. Okay, so we're done with number classification also, and yes, so now we will move on to a couple of examples. I've given you a couple of example questions from classification. We'll do this in the next session. Let me end the session for now. In the next section, we have a couple of examples which are primarily previous year questions. So it will be a very good exercise for you guys. So let me end the session for now and we can move on to the second session. Okay. Thank you.